Then the third thing, the third way these three distinctions, the martyrs, the baptized Christians, and this third one is those that are blessed by God. I got these from David Luce or Lowe's, who is at Luther Seminary. He kind of outlined this as we think about All Saints' Day. He outlined these three different ways to think about it. That anyone who is blessed by God is also a saint. Well, what that tells me is that in some way, shape, or form, I believe everyone has been blessed by God in some way. Certainly there are many in need and many we need to reach, but the mere fact that God created us and loves us means we are blessed by God, and thus all who are living are the saints. So this morning we think for a minute on each of these. We think about the martyrs. We think about those without whom we would not even know of the story of Jesus. If people weren't willing to risk it all to share the gospel, even under persecution and threat of death, we might not know of that good news. We might not be aware of that inheritance. So the martyrs are such a critical piece of our understanding of God and faith in our Christian faith. The martyrs are truly people that are very special in the history of the church. And then all baptized Christians. Our baptism, each of us as we were baptized, whether we were baptized as infants or adults. As baptized as infants, we claim that baby, that infant for Christ. As adults, we might make a public profession of faith that we believe in Jesus and that we put our full faith and trust in Him. It's through that we become a saint. Because in giving our life to Christ, as we like to say at Atlanta First, we become the hands and feet of Christ to the world. And so those that are baptized into the Christian faith must live out that legacy in very tangible ways. Now, it's another sermon for another day as we get into James and faith and works and how much of it is faith and how much of it is works. And what I'll tell you is you need faith and works because your works are indicative of your faith and vice versa. But this morning we think about those works to which we've been called. We think about all the works that have been done in and through Atlanta First United Methodist Church. We think about the current ways that we as baptized Christians live out the call to be saints in the world. Through the ways we continue to mention as we go to Safe House. We were there this past week. As in a couple of weeks we go to the prison and we go back to City of Refuge as we serve meals. As we just go beyond the doors of this church and meet our homeless friends that might sleep on the sidewalk or find a warm place to tuck in at night. We are the saints for them. We find ways to reach out to them and make a difference in their lives. And then I like to talk about everyday saints. Those special, special people. Now, each of us try in our own special way to be the hands and feet of Christ. And we all, in some way, are effective in that. But there are some people that we know that give their entire life for Christ or give their entire lives for others. Everyday saints. Now, I know I've got a number of teachers in here this morning. We had a day at the beginning of the school year where we brought our teachers up front, and I'm looking out and see so many of you, those that are currently serving in education, those that have served in education. I'm going to tell you, those are the everyday saints that teach our children and that help them to learn and grow and to do that day in and day out, sometimes under difficult circumstances. These everyday saints that nurture our children. And those saints that on Sunday morning nurture our children in the faith, those that at this very moment are with our children teaching them in the nursery and in the bigger kids' room. Those people who give of their time for our kids are certainly everyday saints. And then I think about nurses. We have a number of nurses and healthcare professionals in our congregation. Those men and women who give of themselves on a daily basis for the health of individuals and the health of our community. Had my physical on Friday, and I had to have a tetanus shot. I hadn't had one. I couldn't prove when my last tetanus shot was. I was not thinking yesterday that that nurse was such a saint. Those things hurt. She told me it was going to hurt, and it did. But I give thanks for those men and women who give of themselves in that way, who find themselves more often than not on call and willing to can go and be at the side of those who need them so desperately. Police officers and firefighters, our public servants, our everyday saints, those men and women that put themselves in harm's way, that would come and assist us. And then this Thursday is Veterans Day. I would ask that would anybody, I want everybody, and everybody is so special, all of us are saints. But as we look toward Thursday and Veterans Day, if you have served our country in the United States military, will you please stand for a moment? These that have stood this morning are everyday saints. These are people that have put themselves in harm's way, have put their country before themselves. And just as we sit here this morning, throughout this country and around this world are everyday saints who stand at posts, who protect freedom, who fight against injustice. I give thanks for them as everyday saints who are willing to give of themselves that others might live and live in the abundance that God has promised us. And it's my prayer this morning that we never take any of these everyday saints for granted. It would be easy in the comfort in which, the relative comfort in which we all live, to forget about those that have sacrificed, who have given of themselves. I think about the everyday saints in the city of Atlanta. There are so many. One that I've mentioned to you before, but one who just sticks in my mind as an everyday saint was Ruth Schnattmeyer. I think have any of you ever served? I know we in the past have served at the Atlanta Day Shelter for Women and Children. Who's ever served there or had any connection with the Atlanta Day Shelter? I had the privilege, and I've shared this before, but just to remember that I had the opportunity to help to build out that space. Or actually, I was there for the demolition portion of it. That's really my best thing. I tear things up pretty good, as I talked about this morning. It's the putting back together sometimes that I'm not so good at. But I was there for the demolition part of that project that is now the Atlanta Day Shelter for Women and Children. But Ruth Schnattmeyer was just this tiny little woman who had a passion for homeless women and their children, and the fact that there were there were some shelters where these women and their children could get off the street at night, but during the day, she felt as though there weren't sufficient services in the city to meet their needs, to watch after their children as they tried to get a hand up, as they tried to find a job, as they tried to further their education. And so she bounced around from facility to facility. And I remember the contractors with whom I was working talking about her being in board meetings. And as she would suggest what needed to be done, and as those seated around the table couldn't figure out how to get it done, and Ruth would just calmly just look back at them and express her faith in God and her trust that it would get done. And in that quiet, gentle, small woman was a strong and abiding faith that would not accept no for an answer. As she walked out the room, she would leave other men and women scrambling how to make that come to reality. For she knew that in planting that seed and in showing that faith, that a difference would be made in the lives of others. Oh, far too often we're willing to sacrifice the best, but not for Ruth. If she was going to serve the women and children of Atlanta, she was going to do so with excellence. And she wasn't going to take no for an answer. We should have that same faith. We should have that same persistence and perseverance. We too should demand that the saints, that their voices are heard, and that those who are in need, we reach down and reach up and reach out so that those needs can be met. Everyday saints. There are people throughout our community who go about their work quietly, very rarely receiving recognition for the work that they do, Quite frankly, people who don't want to receive recognition for what they do. My fear is the fact that they're not recognized causes us not to be aware of their work and of the great need. And so I hope and pray that each of us seek out those everyday saints, that we seek to become one of those everyday saints, that we support and love one another in the work of the church, that we give thanks for those men and women who do those things that we're either not capable or not willing to do. There's this show on cable, Dirty Jobs, and the gentleman goes around and he actually does a dirty job for the day, and he does whatever it is, and I've watched some pretty horrendous things that he does. We've got to remember those dirty jobs. We've got to remember that there are people that are willing to do that for us. And in my mind, in my heart, those men and women are the everyday saints of our world and of our church. I give thanks for them. Paul reminds us that through faith, we're inheritors of all that's been promised to us. We're reminded in John's gospel that in my Father's house are many rooms, and that Jesus goes to prepare a place for us, and that if he goes and prepares a place for us, there we shall be one day with him. But let's not wait till we gather with the saints. Let's work to be saints in our world today. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.